Hi, my name's Colton. I'm incredibly nervous, but I feel compelled to share something with everybody. Since I was a teenager, I've struggled with a sense of purpose. Not like the existential kind, like, why are we here? But just like, what the fuck am I gonna do with my life, job wise? Um, and still, I really still don't know where I'm gonna land on that. But a few months ago, probably like 4 months ago, I had a dream, and a week after that dream had gone by, 2 weeks after that dream had gone by, I hadn't forgot it. It was stuck in my head. So, out of nowhere, I decided to pick up the book and write it down. And it ended up being this story that I'm writing. It's a fiction story, kind of a sci fi. Um, right now, I have 2 full chapters, and I'm working on the third. And I wanted to go ahead and read you guys the first chapter, just because why not? This is, I'm not, why not? Fuck it. So here goes. Chapter 1, Resignation. The sound of the alarm echoed throughout the mine as the drills slammed into the hard rock. Dust and debris filled the air as nearby men grumbled to one another. Tolmore sat comfortably next to one of the main equipment recharging stations in a mobile office, thumbing through this week's payroll checks. 1, 2, 3, he said to himself as he counted each one. There were 26 men working under Tolmore Ripton in the southern sector of Riker's Corp's mining reservation. 23, 24, 25. 25? He questioned. He recounted to be sure, and again he fell one short. He then picked up his telesponder and alerted the keeper to ask about the missing check. As the telesponder connected, the Rikers Corp motto played. At Rikers Corp, you aren't working for you. You're working for us, and we work for everyone. Remember, you have to mine for your mind. As the mantra ceased, the keeper answered the call. Sector 596, state the nature of your communication. Payroll, said Tolmore. We at Rikers Corp assure you that each and every worker is being compensated a reasonable and deserving wage for their services. All payroll inquiries should be met with a swift and firm fashion, reminding the worker of the previous statement. Tolmore sighed and shook his head. New topic, he said. Sector 596, state the nature of your communication, the telesponder repeated. Attendance, Tolmore said with disdain. The telesponder beeped twice and connected him to Janice Front, the organizer of attendance. This is Janice, what can I do for you? This is Janice, what can I do you for? Hey Janice, it's Tolmore from Sector 596. I was going through this week's payroll checks and I came up one short. Did everyone in my sector register for work today? I figured it'd be quicker to talk to you rather than go off aimlessly searching for the missing guy. Aye, that it would be. All right, give me one sec here. 596, 596. Oh, here we go. Looks like you got 25 with you today. Just 25? I'm supposed to have 26. Yep, 25, clear as day. I checked your workload too, and it does say that you should only have 25 miners now. Looks like Goran Metley resigned at the end of last week. Isn't this your sector? How do you not know the amount of miners that you have, or even supposed to have? Well, damn, Janice, how am I supposed to know something if they don't tell me? All I know is that I had 26 last week, and now I have 25, and no one said a damn thing to me. All right, settle down. You and I both know how they do things here. I was just busting your balls. Is there anything else I can do for you? No, thank you. I'll see you around, Janice. Tolmore hung up the telesponder and sat up in his white leather chair, holding the checks. He recounted once more, just to be sure, and stood up. He paced the span of the office to the utility desk near the entrance to grab his PSARS, protective suit and respirator system. A small rectangle no larger than a flash drive that, when activated, cloaks the user in a protective suit. The discovery of Astinium obviously led to a boom in technological innovation. The first year was a struggle. we had a hard time adapting to unbounded knowledge with lightning-fast recollection, like any human civilization would. The discovery was such a massive event on Tytus that we as a people elected to restart our dating system to symbolize the ushering in of a new age. Then, the seven mines covering Tytus was created. The People's Corporation, the Unnamed Mine, Rikers Corp., Serenity Mines, Syntax Pullmont Corp., REC, or Refinement Excavation and Commerce, and Morgan's. Year 2 brought forth the Age of Leisure, as well as the Miners' Coalition, which governed the lands the mines were allotted and their miners' rights. Robotic butlers, self-traveling vehicles, auto-dressers, and food particleizers, just to name a few of the innovations of the Age of Leisure ushered in. If it made life easier, some rich guy in the early days of Justinian, blitzed out of his mind, created it. The next year didn't ever really get a title, but the PSARs came out of the conference of '03. The Miners' Coalition argued for more protection and benefits for all citizens and miners of Tytus, granting each and every person a free PSARs. Tulmore exited the mobile office and switched on the headlamp on his helmet and began to hand out his week's checks. Everyone got the same pay, so the checks aren't even labeled with a name. Even worse, the checks are basically just vouchers for Ripence, Rikers Corp's own monetary system that they invented that can only be used in towns within Rikers Corp's reservation. Those stores in those towns then have to turn around and pay the mines to operate on its reservation, bringing the Ripence full circle. He got on a mine buggy and began to drive through the corridors, handing out the vouchers to everyone he passed. One guy here, one guy there, a few over there. Most of them were faceless, just like their checks. They wore numbers on their chests corresponding to the tenure at a certain sector. The majority of them just went by their number. Any attempts at conversation would either be shot down or short. No need to get to know the boss, Tulmore thought, convincing himself not to take it personal. However, number 16 went by his name, Dolman Wright, and had been good friends with Tulmore before his promotion last year. Dolman sat with his feet up on a stone with his helmet off, smoking a cigar when Tulmore drove up. "Well, if it isn't the boss man, forgive me, sir, for taking a seat. This old back gets tired of holding up this sector," Dolman said with a smile. "The only thing you're holding up is a bottle, you old lazy bastard," Tulmore replied. They both broke into a laugh and hugged, patting each other's backs and sending dust into the air. "What brings you around? I haven't seen you in around, 2 months? "Closer to 4, actually," Tulmore replied. "Usually I just let you guys come and get your checks from the office at the end of the shift, but today I wanted to hand out the checks myself. Last week we had 25 miners, and this week only 25, and I didn't get told anything." "Well, you'd think as the overseer of the sector you would know how many workers you got." "Yeah, you would think. So I go and call up Janice over in attendance, and he tells me that some guy named Gordon Metley resigned last week. I mean, come on, shouldn't I have been informed?" "Resigned? He said resigned?" Dolman questioned concerningly. "Yeah, that's what Janice told me. Why?" Tulmore replied. "Now, I didn't know the kid, but I knew of him, and let me tell you, he definitely did not resign." "Well, what makes you say that?" "Well, last week I was mining down in the E shaft when I heard some yelling echoing throughout the mine. So I followed her over to G shaft where that kid and some of Riker's centurions were. They had him pinned up against the wall and were questioning him about what all he knew. Tulmore, they were beating this poor kid senseless. Then they just carried him away out the equipment entrance. And let me say, if that was a resignation, I would really hate to see what happens if we were to be fired." "I can't believe this. And you're sure it was Gordon?" "Sure as the day is bright," Dolman replied. "Is there anyone else that you know that witnessed this?" "I was trying my best to stay hidden, so I didn't take the time to try to look around for other people watching the show. But a few days after, I was taking my break when I overheard 17 talking to 19 about Gordon. I didn't hear any details, but I definitely heard the name." "Thanks, Dolman. You've always been a good friend to me. I think I need to talk to 17 and 19 about this. But something bad is clearly going on. Do you know anything about those two?" Well, 17 came on right after me. I think maybe 2, 3 weeks later. His name is like Hindor or Hinfor or something similar. And 19, I don't know nothing about. I guess I'm starting with 17 then, Tolmore replied. I have a favor to ask, and I'll understand if you don't want to do it. Say no more, T. Whatever you need, I'm here. If something did happen, someone needs to do something. Otherwise, what's stopping them from doing that to me, or you, or anyone? And I'm too old now to be some shit on I'm too old now to be shit on some corporate bureaucrat's shoes, only to be scraped off on a whim and have not even my own boss know of it. I'm glad to hear that, Dolman. All right, meet me after the shift at Arog's at 9 tonight, and I'll let you know what I find out from 17 and 19 after I find them and give them their checks. I'll be there, Dolman replied, holding out his hand. Tolmore reached out and shook it, and turned away to walk to the buggy. He went throughout the mine, handing out the remainder of the checks, looking for that green sash around... Oh, shit. Looking for that green check sash around the chest that says either 17 or 19. Oddly enough, both of them were the last two checks. Tolmore finally found them at the bottom of the B2 shaft. The mine shafts were labeled alphabetically, but after a sector had 26 individual shafts, the labeling restarts with a 2 attached, and then a 3, and so on. You two must be 17 and 19, Tolmore said out to them, smiling, and then pointing an open hand to 17. And you must be Hindor? Hefnor. Who are you? 17 replied. His helmet's cover screen made seeing his face impossible, but the tone of his voice was not inviting. I'm Tolmore, the overseer of this sector. Man, we really need some more structure here. Anyways, I have your check for the week. Hefnor's shoulders softened, and he glanced over to 19, who hadn't acknowledged Tolmore's arrival yet, and then back to Tolmore. All right, hand it over. Well, before I do that, I was going to ask you about something that happened last week, Tolmore said, pulling the check out from his pocket. Listen, boss, I ain't done nothing. I ain't seen nothing, all right? Now just hand me my check and let's get on with our own way, Hefnor said, audibly nervous. Don't worry, I don't think you realize what I'm trying to do here. I want to know about Goran Metley. I know that you two were talking about him after what happened last week. I'm not trying to get you in trouble. I actually want to find out what really happened to him because I was told he resigned. I think we all know that that is not what happened. Hefnor looked over again to 19, who still stood silent and motionless, and then back to Tolmore. How do we know that we can trust you? If you didn't trust me, you wouldn't have asked me that. Now come on. I just need to know what you know about Goran, and I'm not talking about an 8-page essay, just the basics. We can talk more in depth later, outside the mines. You never know who's listening. Hefnor nodded and sat down his mining laser. He then took a few steps closer towards Tolmore so that he can speak with a whisper. All right. All I know is Goran overheard a couple of the guards talking about a takeover. Then the next thing we know, he's getting his ass beat by a couple of centurions. Must have blabbed to the wrong guy. A takeover? Tolmore questioned, his eyes hidden by his helmet but wide open with concern nonetheless. You know what that means, right? Miners become soldiers. I know, Hefnor said, somberly. Tolmore stood silently for a moment, trying to reason with the news. He knew the power Riker's Corp had already and shuddered at the thought of it gaining more. If a takeover were to happen, so would a mandatory draft. You can't take over another mine just by saying please. Okay, let's speak no more about it, Tolmore finally said. He then pointed at 19, who still had not spoken or even moved since his arrival. You have been strangely quiet. How do I know that I can trust you? 19 looked over at Hefnor, who gave a small nod, and then turned back to look at Tolmore, almost in slow motion. He then sat down his laser and reached up to remove his helmet. He unclasped the buckles on each side, sending out a wave of pressurized air with an audible hiss. When the helmet was lifted, no chin was revealed, nor a mouth, or a nose, or even eyes. No, instead, Tolmore's flashlight glistened off his steely skin. Wires and cables had replaced the veins and arteries on this man's neck. What was revealed was a smooth, steel, expressionless face, if you could call it that. The only feature on its face was a single blue gem in the shape of a diamond in what would be our forehead. Tolmore stepped back in panic and tripped over a rock, falling to the ground. Hefner walked over and held out his hand. "It's all right. He can't speak, but he's a good guy." "A good guy?" Tolmore shouted. "He's not even human. What is that?" "Calm down. I made him, dude. Dude, I'm seriously surprised you're acting like this. I mean, we have literal flying cars." "Well, yeah, but I've never seen a fully autonomous robot before." "You made him?" he said, taking Hefner's hand. "Yeah, I did. A couple years back, when Astinium was discovered, I had quite a bit of money, and I got hooked bad. One of the first things I made was him. Oh, his name is Blue, by the way." "Blue, huh? So you made a fully autonomous robot, but couldn't give him the ability to speak?" Hefner raised his hands and shrugged. I know. Everyone always says that. I guess I got so caught up in making him as smart as I could that I forgot to give him a voice. Oh, and to make it worse, when I made him, I was so paranoid that someone else was going to steal my ideas that I installed a program that self-destructs Blue if anyone or anything tries to make any copies or alterations. But oh well, what are you going to do? Hey, he is a great listener, though. Ain't that right, Blue?" he said, looking over at the robot, who gave a thumbs up and the prism on its forehead glowed. "But yes, he can be trusted fully," Hefner said, assuring Tolmore. Blue put his helmet back on and picked up his laser and got back to work. It was only then that Tolmore realized why he had been fooled into thinking Blue was human. Pauses for thought, second guesses, personality quirks, and a near-perfect fluidity of motion gave Blue a physical form practically equal to ours. It was true that we had robots already, but they were purpose-orientated, like butlers or dressers or maids, all of which were obviously non-human. Jittery movements and a true one-track mind was all Tolmore was used to. This one here was by far the most advanced machine he has ever seen so far, voice or not. "All right, well, here's your checks," Tolmore said, handing out the checks to both of them. "If you want to meet me later at Arog's, we can talk more in depth, but I cannot guarantee your safety. I can't even guarantee my own, to be honest," he said, turning back towards the mine buggy. "We'll think about it," came the reply. Simple, but enough to light a small flame of hope within Tolmore. As he got back on the buggy, he drove in silence to the mobile office that he departed from. One of the perks of being overseer of a sector is the mobile office, or MO, pronounced Mo, as most called them. The Mo's also came out of the O3 conference alongside the PSARs. The Mo was a large box on two thin tracks with 6 running wheels within each side. Inside was a simple couch, desk, computer, a couple chairs, air ventilation systems, and most importantly, a personal restroom. When traveling, the Mo's office compartment would collapse down into the chassis, allowing the Mo to move down the narrow mine shafts. Once Tolmore arrived at the Mo, he gathered his watch and coat that was draped over the back of the office chair tucked neatly under the desk. When he exited, he typed in the code 47621 on the dial pad, collapsing the mobile office down to a fifth of its size. Each individual Mo had its own collapse code that reset every day, and is only given to the overseer each morning to prevent crushing injuries from someone collapsing the Mo while people were inside. He then set the Mo to follow mode and got back on the buggy and began to drive to the mine's entrance. From where he was, he figured it would be driving for around 45 minutes, give or take. He passed 2 equipment recharging stations and 16 branching mine shafts that led deeper into Tytus. He passed the Great Lake Juliet, an underground lake spanning miles into the caves with towering cavernous ceilings. Right before he arrived at the mine's entrance, he passed the Miners' Union, a place of operation for representatives of the Miners' Coalition. Next to the Miners' Union was the recall station. At the end of every day, Everyone is responsible for bringing all vehicles and mining lasers to the recall station to recharge and undergo a cleaning and sanitation process. After Tolmore dropped off his vehicles, he removed his PSARs, which shrunk back down into its flash drive form. He put the PSARs in his pocket and walked towards the towering mine door. Rikers Corp installed these massive locking doors to prevent unnecessary death. To open them, there was a small outhouse-looking building with a large floor-to-ceiling window facing the iron doors. Tolmore placed his left hand on the lone pedestal that stood within the room, and a red laser scanned his palm. With the sound of the alarms and a lot of flashing lights, the mine's entrance split in two, both sides receding into the walls, sending out a slow rumble as they slid on their almost hidden tracks. As Tytus's blue sun Euronymous shone through the gap, slowly revealing itself, a bead of nervous sweat fell down Tolmore's forehead, and for a moment, he thought it was blood. That's the end of chapter 1. I do have chapter 2 done, so if anybody wants to hear that, just let me know in a comment and I'll upload it. Thanks.